With the second season of Jujutsu Kaisen currently running, and one of the best fights in the series coming soon, I thought it would be the perfect time to speak briefly about Yuji, Mahito, and Sukuna, and how the mindset and narrative of all these characters allow me to believe that Yuji could become somebody who not only surpasses Sukuna in strength, but in mentality as a sorcerer, becoming something sort of another divine figure in Jujutsu Kaisen. But allow me to lay out the foundation of my claim, starting with Mahito. When Mahito enters the story, he's a curse who is fundamentally different from the others. This being due to his ability to perceive the soul, and couple this with being the embodiment of human resentment, he's naturally both a very powerful curse and a curse who's born with a very twisted outlook of humanity. And I believe that such a unique foundation was what allowed Mahito to have the scary potential he did. When Mahito speaks to Junpei, he essentially explains to him that everything has a soul. Humans, ants, and even plants all have souls. And the only thing that humans have over anything else is their capacity. This capacity has allowed humans to create a reason as to why their lives are valued the most over anything else. But from Mahito's perspective as a curse with the same intelligence as a human, it's that humans are no more than another organism with a self-righteous attitude about their existence. With that being said, we fast forward over 100 chapters, all the way to Yuji versus Mahito, where Mahito sets up Nobara to be eliminated right in front of Yuji. And Yuji temporarily loses the will to fight, and Mahito takes this opportunity to beat him up pretty bad. And while doing this, he tells Yuji this: "You are me, Yuji Tadori. I kill without a second thought, just like how you save people without a second thought." The instincts of a curse against the so-called dignity attained by human reason, it's a battle to determine who will be standing in 100 years. When Mahito says this to Yuji, it's a declaration against his self-righteousness that humans have defined as their laws of good and evil. What allows humanity to preach themselves as a sacred life form as they go around and exterminate curses without a second thought? Do they not all bear souls in the end? But this is just what Mahito believes, in the same way that Yuji believes that all human life should be cherished and protected. As Mahito told Yuji that this is not a battle to fix what's right or wrong, but a clash of truths, and whoever wins this clash of truths will be quote unquote correct, it's a brief reminder that only the winners write history. Mahito wants Yuji to understand that there is no right or wrong. The only thing that humans have over every other organism is that again, that they have conscious thought and can conceptualize their existence and the nuance of it. And with this advantage, humans have essentially taken over the entire world, and even consume lower life forms such as animals and plants because they're on top. So what's wrong when curses want to do the same? They have sentience and thoughts. So where does this human dignity come into play when faced against an alternative form of humanity? Do not misunderstand though. This is only to lay the foundation for Mahito's foil toward Yuji, to help explain why both Mahito and Yuji clash so much, and eventually explain how they're so similar. I believe that there is truly no correct answer when it comes to Yuji versus Mahito, and that the only thing that matters is themselves. This is why after Mahito lands his Black Flash on Yuji, it's stated that the sparks of black do not choose who to bless, clarifying to the viewer that the world itself does not believe anyone is right here, nor does it hold a bias toward any of them. As this battle reaches its climax, Yuji Tadori pummels Mahito relentlessly and forces him to evolve as a curse, manifesting a completely upgraded form, with a mask similar to those who have transcended. Mahito here has realized his true form as a curse through both coming close to death and wanting to kill Yuji with his own hand more than anything, even forsaking the goal of converting Sukuna to his side. He asks Yuji here to wish him a happy birthday as he completely taps into his self-indulgence. Something to add here is that this was where Mahito had entered a growth rate, an ascension that he would go nowhere but up from. Mahito likely would have gone to grow at an even faster rate than he was throughout the entire series, and none would have been able to stop him, maybe with the exception of Yuki. But Mahito operating at 300% of his normal capacity does give him a chance to survive long enough for another evolution. But thankfully, Yuji lands the Black Flash on Mahito, defeating him for good. The sparks of black that Mahito grasps to destroy Yuji's will chose Yuji to prevent a horrible future from reaching this world. As Yuji finally closes the battle, he tells Mahito that he was correct. I am you. I wanted to reject you, convince myself that you were wrong, but that doesn't matter now. I'm gonna kill you. Even if you come back as another curse, I will kill you. Change your name, change your form, I will kill you again. I don't need to find a meaning or reason. maybe 100 years after my death, the meaning behind my actions will become apparent. In the grand scheme of things, I'm nothing more than a cog, but I will keep killing curses for as long as I can. That's my role in all of this. Yuji confirms what Mahito said about the battle being to determine who will stand in 100 years, but he also confirms that they are the same. He didn't want to admit it, but to grow as a human, he had to. They are self-indulgent geniuses who must simply do what they feel as if they must do, and Yuji actualizes this by guessing what his role is in all of this and refusing to think any more of it. Very similar to how Sukuna portrayed the origin of his existence when faced against Kashimo. As Kashimo asks Sukuna many questions, Sukuna gives Kashimo the bare minimum, the absolute truth and nothing more to it. He simply wants to act and teach Kashimo by doing so. Although Yuji doesn't care to teach Mahito anything here, he does give Mahito one final answer and moves to finish him off in a similar manner. At the end of it all, Yuji and Mahito both believed in the rejection of their counterparts. Mahito hates humans due to his natural instincts as a curse, taking absolute joy in torturing them relentlessly, despite ironically being known as the human curse. This human-like curse, whose greatest asset of change and adaptability comes from being created by the malice of humanity in the first place. Whereas Yuji Tadori, who contains the greatest curse of them all, and is everything curse-related but a curse spared at this point in the series, despises curses, and absolutely refuses to accept them. But the reason why Mahito had to be crushed by Yuji here is because this is as far as Mahito could take Yuji as a character. At the end of the day, Mahito is a curse, and thus cannot reason the same way that Kenjaku and Sukuna can. Although those two are not very reasonable, they do not rely on their instincts alone. They ponder certain questions, they entertain others' philosophies, and even engage in a little bit of debate. When it came to Mahito, there was nothing swaying his hatred of humanity, nor would he ever recognize any flaws in his own philosophy due to him being a curse whose foundation relies on the hatred of humanity. I also believe that Mahito's time was up with the introduction of Choso as Yuji's brother. Despite Yuji's complete rejection and hatred of curses, he's essentially forced to understand and cherish Choso as a sibling, who is a special grade curse himself. Mahito will not be able to grow as a curse in this way, as he's either betrayed, threatened, or attempted to betray every human he's worked with in the series. Whereas Sukuna was able to acknowledge and go out of his way to understand his opponents after defeating them, and despite Kenjaku's obsession with the evolution of humanity, he admits to Takaba that if something were more interesting, he'd redirect his attention. So in my honest opinion, this is why Yuji had to move on from Mahito at this point, towards Sukuna and eventually Kenjaku. Yuji and Sukuna share an interesting dynamic, and Sukuna is rightfully the next step in challenging Yuji's ideals. Where Sukuna expresses his interest in every single human, saying that they're all so unique that he'd be able to satiate himself until the end of time, he finds Yuji endlessly boring, and it's almost natural for him to express this toward Yuji whenever they confront one another. Interestingly enough, this boredom is pointed toward Yuji's self-indulgence and his purpose to exterminate every curse. These core traits allow Yuji to relentlessly trudge through everything Sukuna could throw at him at this point. As natural as it is for Sukuna to live as a calamity, doing whatever he wants whenever he feels like it, there are many times that this stumbles upon Yuji's own territory of self-indulgence, his own natural feeling of protecting humanity. People will say that this is due to him being a Jujutsu sorcerer, but he jumped in to fight a curse to protect others before becoming a sorcerer and knowing what a curse was. So he had these traits at least before he was a sorcerer. I want to even go ahead and say that Yuji is extraordinarily selfish and was some sort of a modern day Sukuna from what we've seen from all of his pre-Jujutsu sorcerer moments. He displays interest in only Yuko because of her handwriting and how she carries himself, and expresses it as straightforward as possible when asked about a potential love interest. He doesn't really care for what his peers think, and only chose Ozawa because out of all the girls, she had the most interesting qualities, nothing else. When faced with Amai, he crushes all of the bullies around him with ease and absolutely no remorse, and naturally questions Amai if he wanted to be next. And lastly, in chapter 1, when the track and field coach was settling the terms and conditions for the showdown, Yuji had only accepted the showdown the moment he heard the only thing that he was interested in, without even letting the coach explain what he gets if he were to beat Itadori. Yuji in all of his flashbacks did whatever he wanted and reacted to things that stood in the way of him doing what he wanted, akin to how Sukuna carried himself in the Heian era. And with the way that Yuji was built, He could have easily amassed wealth, fame, or whatever. He broke Olympic records at 16 years old. And this could be a bit of a reach, but Yuji could be the modern era Sukuna, as Sukuna was built overwhelmingly superior to everybody and everything around him in the Heian era. Yuji seems to be the same in the context of the modern era, where of course, there's way more peace in a regular functioning society, whereas in the Heian era, Jujutsu and curses ran amok, and battle determined who was superior. The modern era has way more factors than just raw strength, and Yuji seemed to be perfect for someone who could become somebody who's ridiculously successful with almost no effort. I will even use all of these flashback moments as a foundation to a mini theory that Yuji Itadori was saved by his grandfather cursing him with his final words. These final words being, "You're a strong kid, so help people." It doesn't have to be everyone, just whenever you can. You may feel lost, don't expect gratitude, just help them. When it's your time to go, make sure you're surrounded by others. Don't end up like me. We see these words come up in chapter 1 later on, when Yuji's well aware that he's risking his life when attempting to save his friends. He's reminded of Megumi telling him to stay behind, but he says, "What am I doing? What am I so afraid of? Death. I can somehow feel death from the school. I'm afraid of dying. I wonder if Grandpa was scared of death. Probably not. I cried because I was sad, not scared. The death I face now and Grandpa's death, how's it different? You're a strong kid, so help people." These final words come upon Yuji once more, and they're what push Yuji to go against every fiber in his body and march toward death for the sake of others. So I do believe that his grandfather's final words play a huge role in a lot of his actions from here on out, and that these words may have prevented him from becoming someone who entertains their self-indulgence like Sukuna, and maybe even lead him into the path of a Jujutsu sorcerer. In this way, Yuji and Sukuna are two sides of the same coin, where again, Sukuna does not care much for his own origin when questioned by Kashimo. Yuji shares his same attitude, ignoring his grandfather when he attempted to share details of Yuji's parents with him, and instead dismissed them by telling him he doesn't care, twice. They're both naturally self-indulgent to a point where they've both decided to disregard the logic and potential truth behind their existence and actions. They simply move forward, doing what they want without bothering to consider the future one bit. But they're two existences who violate what the other stands for by simply existing, and they cannot coexist due to this. What Sukuna declares to be natural is what Yuji considers to be spreading misery. When Yuji resembles the peak of humanity through his indomitable willpower, Sukuna for the one and only time declares him to be boring. These two cannot reason with, let alone understand one another, as when Yuji questions Sukuna's actions in 214, Sukuna states that it's only natural for anything beneath him to be crushed, and that anything beneath him should spend their lives stifling their misery by increasing their strength. Whereas Yuji, on the other hand, believes the morals that we all do. The modern humans are not brought up and defined by endless battle. They are brought up by prioritizing society and bringing values, peace, and opportunity to all, whether they have power or not. As Yuji hears what Sukuna says, he decides to ultimately give Sukuna the same judgment he once gave to Mahito, and forgo all attempts at communication from here on out. As Yuji accepts that he can no longer coexist with Sukuna, he declares this by pushing Sukuna to stifle his own misery, and Sukuna accepts his declaration by telling him to come closer. For how similar both Yuji and Sukuna are, I do believe that Yuji can reach Sukuna's level, and with his current purpose, this desire to kill Sukuna above all else will be able to propel him past Sukuna. Yuji seems to be the only character in the series who seems to at least have the potential to reach the level of self-indulgence and existence that Sukuna and Mahito do, all the while maintaining a purpose to actually drive him forward. He naturally protects people because he wants to, and because of his grandfather's curse, subconsciously pushing him to, alongside an unbearable hatred towards Sukuna, one that even has him state outright that he would do anything to kill him. Now, I'm not sure how Yuji will actually reach Sukuna's level, maybe with the usage of binding vows or just pure raw hatred, but it's possible. I also believe that Mahito, a curse with the potential to surpass Sukuna and having the same amount of self-indulgence as him, being Yuji's foil in the narrative of Jujutsu Kaisen, also displays as an indicator for the potential of Yuji surpassing Sukuna. And once Mahito had reached his limit as a character, he had to be removed from the series. To wrap this up, the narrative has recently been suggesting that the characters who hold this air of self-indulgence to simply live as befit their nature and primarily in the present are the ones who will stand above the rest. So I'm certain that Yuji himself can't eventually get up there with Sukuna. However, Jujutsu Kaisen is very unorthodox, and I can see Yuji even matching Sukuna and yet still dying at his hand. But if I had to bet on anybody here and now, it will be Yuji Itadori. Alright, that wraps up the video. Hopefully you enjoyed. This is a little different, right? I'm narrating differently more than just outright storytelling. I'm kind of like speaking to you guys. Let me know if you guys rock with this. You know, I want feedback on all of my videos so I can constantly make them better and constantly keep you guys engaged with the content. With that being said, thank you so much for watching all the way through. Have a great day, and I will see you guys all in the next one. Peace out. Oh yeah, and I hit 20K. Thank you guys for all the support there. I have to shout that out in the video. I want to shout out my milestones in videos, so like you guys do know that I really see all the support. I really just want to make sure my audience knows I'm really grateful for you guys. With that being said, peace out.